It was supposed to be a regular day. Nothing extraordinary, just another long shift at work, followed by the comfort of returning home to my wife, Emma. But sometimes, life takes a turn so sharp that it leaves you breathless. That was the day everything I thought I knew came crashing down. I wasn't feeling well that morning, a throbbing headache and a general sense of fatigue. But I pushed through my meetings, answering emails, and running through endless presentations. By lunchtime, though, I couldn't ignore how drained I felt. I decided to call it a day and head home early. I didn't tell Emma because I didn't think it was necessary. She was probably at home, watching one of her crime documentaries or tinkering with her never-ending list of Pinterest projects. When I arrived, the house was unusually quiet. Normally, Emma would greet me at the door, all smiles and warmth. That was one of the reasons I married her. She had this incredible way of making the mundane feel special. But that day, there was no sound of her footsteps, no smell of her signature lavender candle burning, just silence. I stepped inside, kicking off my shoes, and immediately noticed something odd. A jacket, my brother Liam's jacket, was draped over the back of the living room chair. My stomach tightened. What was Liam doing here in the middle of the day? Liam was charming and magnetic, but he had a knack for popping up uninvited. I assumed he had dropped by to borrow something or kill time. Still, something about the way the house felt made my skin crawl. Then I heard it. Laughter. Emma's laugh, soft and melodic, coming from upstairs. It wasn't the kind of laugh she shared while watching TV. It was intimate, playful. My heart started to race. I hesitated for a moment, trying to convince myself that I was misreading the situation. Maybe they were watching something together, reminiscing about an old family story. I wanted to believe that so badly. But as I climbed the stairs, the laughter turned into muffled voices, and then, sounds I couldn't misinterpret. My head was spinning, my heart pounding in my chest. I stopped just outside the bedroom door, the scene playing out in my head before I even saw it. I opened the door slowly, quietly, not knowing what I was walking into but bracing myself for the worst. And there they were, Emma and Liam, tangled in each other's arms, right there in the bed we had shared for years. The air left my lungs. I didn't yell or make a scene. I just stood there, frozen. Liam turned his head, and when his eyes met mine, he didn't flinch. Instead, he smirked. Smirked, like he had won some twisted prize. My own brother. Something inside me clicked. I didn't explode in anger. I didn't scream. I pulled out my phone and said, "I just sent your wife a video of you too." My voice was calm, eerily calm, but every word was a blade. The smirk vanished from Liam's face, replaced by panic. "What did you do?" he stammered, grabbing for his phone. Emma sat up, her face pale as a sheet, her mouth opening and closing like she was searching for words that wouldn't come. I didn't wait for an explanation. There was nothing to explain. I stepped back, watching as Liam frantically called Clara, his wife. I could hear her yelling through the phone, demanding answers. His voice cracked as he tried to explain himself, his charm useless for once. Clara wasn't buying it, and neither was I. Emma started to cry, reaching for me, saying it was a mistake, but I didn't even look at her. Mistake? A mistake is forgetting to lock the front door. This was a choice. I turned and walked out of the room, letting them both sit in their panic and guilt. As I made my way downstairs, my head was spinning with a mix of anger, disbelief, and something else, relief. Relief that I wasn't the fool they thought I was. Relief that I had exposed their betrayal in a way they couldn't deny or twist. I sat in the living room, listening to the chaos unfolding upstairs as Liam tried to salvage what was left of his marriage. It's strange how calm I felt in those moments, like my emotions had shut down to protect me from the weight of what I'd just seen. I wasn't thinking about the years I'd spent with Emma or the bond one thought I had with Liam. I was thinking about what came next, how I would take back control of my life and leave their betrayal behind me. When they finally came downstairs, their faces pale and full of dread, I simply looked at them and said, "Now, let's talk about what's next." You'd think being a twin would mean having a built-in best friend for life. That's what people always told me when I was growing up. "You and Liam must be inseparable," they'd say. I'd smile and nod because, honestly, what else could I do? The reality was far from the picturesque bond people imagined. From as early as I can remember, Liam and I were always compared. At first, it was harmless. Who walked first? Who talked first? But as we got older, those comparisons started to sting. I was the smart twin, the responsible one, the natural leader. Liam was the funny twin, the laid-back one, the wild card. At family gatherings, relatives would pat me on the back for my academic achievements and tell Liam, "Don't worry, you'll find your thing," as if being himself wasn't enough. The resentment started to build slowly, like water dripping into a glass. Liam would brush it off with jokes, but I could see it in his eyes, the frustration, the anger. When I won first place in a school science competition, he made sure to sabotage my presentation board the night before. When I started dating my first girlfriend in high school, he charmed her away within weeks. That was Liam's way of leveling the playing field. If he couldn't beat me, he'd take from me. As we got older, the competition became less direct but no less intense. I worked hard, got a good job, and built a stable life. Liam, on the other hand, drifted from one scheme to another, never quite finding his footing. He'd show up to family dinners with stories of grand plans, real estate ventures, tech startups, you name it. None of them ever panned out, and our parents would inevitably ask me to talk some sense into him. The family gatherings became predictable. Liam would show up late, flash his charming smile, and spend the night cracking jokes at my expense. Everyone laughed because Liam was funny, and I could take it. "It's just Liam being Liam," they'd say. But underneath the humor, I could feel the sharp edge of his words, the way he tried to chip away at the image I'd built. When I introduced Emma to the family, I could see the shift in Liam immediately. He turned on the charm, as he always did, but there was something different this time. He wasn't just trying to get under my skin. He was trying to claim something that wasn't his. I shrugged it off because Emma didn't seem to pay him much attention, and I trusted her. That was my mistake. I don't think Liam ever stopped resenting me. Every achievement of mine felt like a spotlight on his failures. Every compliment I received was, in his mind, a reminder of what he didn't have. Over the years, I tried to bridge the gap between us. I offered him help when he was struggling, defended him when others wrote him off, and included him in my life even when it wasn't convenient. I wanted to believe that we could have the kind of bond people expected us to have. But Liam didn't want a brother. He wanted a rival. Looking back, I can see the warning signs now. The way Liam's jokes about Emma got a little too personal. The way he'd show up at our house unannounced, always with some flimsy excuse. The way he'd linger just a little too long when saying goodbye. But I brushed it all aside, convincing myself that he wouldn't cross that line. He was my brother. After all, blood is thicker than water, right? Except Liam never saw it that way. To him, I wasn't his brother. I was the benchmark he could never reach, the obstacle he could never overcome. And when he saw an opportunity to take something from me, he didn't hesitate. He didn't just betray me. He made it personal. He wanted me to see him win, to feel the sting of losing for once. That's why he smirked when I caught him in my bed. He thought he'd finally found a way to beat me. But Liam underestimated me. He always has. I wasn't going to let him walk away from this unscathed. I'd spent my whole life cleaning up his messes, letting him get away with his little victories. Not this time. This time, I'd make sure he understood exactly what it meant to lose everything. As I watched him panic, fumbling with his phone to call Clara, I felt a strange sense of clarity. This wasn't just about Emma or the affair. It was about years of pent-up resentment finally coming to a head. Liam thought he could take what was mine and walk away unscathed. But for the first time in his life, he was about to face the consequences of his actions. And I wasn't going to lift a finger to help him. Looking back, I wonder when it started. The affair, I mean, not just the physical part of it, but the connection that grew between Emma and Liam, the one I was too blind to see. Was it that first family dinner where Liam turned up late, flashing his trademark grin and turning every head in the room? Or was it later, during those casual visits when I wasn't home, and Liam always seemed to have an excuse to drop by? Emma met Liam a few weeks after we started dating. I'd always been upfront about having a twin brother, though I hadn't gone into detail about our complicated relationship. At the time, I didn't think it mattered. Emma was warm and grounded, the kind of woman who made everyone around her feel at ease. Liam, on the other hand, was unpredictable, charming one moment, insufferable the next. I didn't think they'd have much to talk about, but I underestimated Liam's ability to command attention. The first time they met, we were at a family dinner. I introduced Emma to everyone, and she was an instant hit. My mom adored her, my dad gave his quiet approval, and my cousins fawned over her. But Liam? He acted like he'd known her for years. He cracked jokes, teased her about her taste in movies, and even made a bet with her over some silly trivia question. Emma laughed at his antics, and I didn't think much of it. That was just Liam being Liam. In the months that followed, Liam started showing up more often. At first, it seemed harmless. He'd drop by to borrow tools or pick up something he'd left behind during a previous visit. But then the visits became more frequent, and his excuses became flimsier. I was in the neighborhood, he'd say, or I just wanted to check in on you guys. I didn't mind too much. I wanted to believe that Liam was trying to reconnect, to build the kind of relationship we'd never really had as brothers. And Emma, ever the gracious host, welcomed him with open arms. I didn't notice the shift right away. It was subtle at first, Emma laughing a little too hard at Liam's jokes, Liam lingering a little too long during goodbyes. Then there were the private conversations. I'd come home to find them talking in the living room, their heads close together, their voices low. Just catching up, they'd say, and I believed them. Why wouldn't I? Emma was my wife, and Liam was my brother. I trusted them both. There was one moment, though, that stuck with me. We were hosting a barbecue, and Liam had brought his usual flair, flipping burgers with one hand while making everyone laugh with the other. At one point, Emma spilled something on her shirt, and Liam immediately jumped in to help, grabbing a napkin and dabbing at the stain. It was innocent enough, but the way they looked at each other for just a second too long made my stomach churn. I brushed it off, telling myself I was imagining things. But the seed of doubt was planted. Emma and I had always been solid. At least, that's what I thought. She wasn't the type to complain or pick fights, but now I wonder if that was part of the problem. Did she feel neglected? Unappreciated? I worked long hours, sure, but it was for us, for the life we were building together. I thought she understood that. I thought she was happy. But maybe Liam offered her something I couldn't: attention, spontaneity, an escape from the routine of our marriage. It's not easy to admit that your wife might have found something in someone else, especially when that someone else is your own twin. The betrayal isn't just about the act itself. It's about the choices that led to it. The stolen glances, the quiet conversations, the moments of connection that I wasn't a part of. They made choices, small, seemingly insignificant choices, that built a bridge between them and pushed me further away. I think the worst part is knowing that Liam didn't just betray me. He used his understanding of me to get to Emma. He knew my weaknesses, my blind spots. He knew when I was too busy to notice the cracks forming. And Emma let him in, knowing full well what it would mean for us, for our marriage. By the time I caught them in bed together, their connection was no longer a question. It was undeniable. Liam's smirk when he saw me wasn't just arrogance. It was a declaration. He wasn't sorry. He wasn't ashamed. He was proud of what he'd taken from me, as if this betrayal was some twisted form of victory. But Emma? Her face told a different story. There was guilt, sure, but also something else: regret. Not for the betrayal itself, but for getting caught. She had made her choice long before that moment, and now she was left to face the consequences. Whatever connection they had, whatever spark or thrill she thought she'd found with Liam, it wasn't worth what she was about to lose. And that's what I held on to as I walked out of that bedroom. They could have their connection, their shared secrets and stolen moments. I didn't want any part of it. Let them deal with the fallout. I had bigger things to focus on: my dignity, my sanity, and my future without them. The moment the words left my mouth, "I just sent your wife a video of you too," everything changed. Liam's smirk, that smug, infuriating smirk, evaporated faster than I could have hoped. His face twisted in shock and panic, and for the first time in our lives, I had the upper hand. What did you do?" Liam stammered, reaching for his phone with trembling hands. He fumbled with the screen, muttering under his breath as he desperately tried to call Clara, his wife. Clara, strong, intelligent, Fiercely independent Clara wasn't the type to tolerate betrayal, and Liam knew it. His voice cracked as he said her name, his bravado crumbling before my eyes. I leaned against the wall, arms crossed, watching him unravel. "Go ahead," I said, my tone cold and deliberate. "Call her. See how that works out for you." The phone rang once, twice, and then Clara picked up. Even from where I stood, I could hear the venom in her voice. "What the hell is this, Liam?" she barked. "What am I looking at?" Liam's face turned a shade paler, and he stammered, "Clara, listen. It's not what it looks like." I couldn't help but let out a bitter laugh at that. Not what it looks like. The audacity. Liam shot me a glare, but it held no power. He knew he was cornered, and there was no way out. Not what it looks like? Clara's voice was loud enough now that even Emma could hear it from the corner where she stood, frozen and pale. "You're in bed with your brother's wife, Liam. What part of this isn't what it looks like?" Liam floundered, searching for words, but Clara wasn't done. "You're disgusting. Do you hear me? Disgusting. Don't come home. Don't even think about it. I'm done." The call ended with a click, and the silence that followed was deafening. Liam stood there, phone still pressed to his ear, as if willing Clara to call back. But she wouldn't. He knew it. I knew it. Emma finally found her voice, whispering, "Liam, I didn't mean for this to happen." I cut her off. "Don't bother," I said, my gaze fixed on Liam. "Neither of you meant for this to happen, right? It just did. Isn't that the story?" Liam turned to me, his expression shifting from panic to anger. "Why would you do this?" he demanded, his voice shaking. "You could have just talked to me. You didn't have to drag Clara into this." I stepped closer, my voice dropping to a low, dangerous tone. "Why would I do this? Are you serious, Liam? You're standing in my house, in my bedroom, with my wife, and you're asking me why I exposed you? You don't get to make demands anymore." He tried to hold my gaze, but he couldn't. His shoulders slumped, and he sank onto the edge of the bed like a man who just realized how far he'd fallen. "Clara's going to leave me," he muttered, almost to himself. "Good," I said bluntly. "She deserves better than you." Emma stepped forward then, her voice trembling. "Noah, please, I turned to her, cutting her off again. "Don't. Just don't. I don't want to hear it. Not right now." She looked at me, tears streaming down her face, but I felt nothing. Whatever love or sympathy I might have had for her was buried under the weight of her betrayal. The room was suffocating, filled with their guilt and my rage. I needed to get out. Turning to Liam, I said, "You need to leave. Now." Liam didn't move at first, still clutching his phone like it was some kind of lifeline. "Where am I supposed to go?" he asked weakly. "That's not my problem," I replied. "You made your bed. Now lie in it, just not in mine." He stood slowly, casting a glance at Emma, who looked as lost as he did. But neither of them said another word as they shuffled out of the room. I followed them to the door, watching as Liam fumbled with his car keys. As he climbed into his car, I leaned against the doorframe and said, "Oh, and Liam, Clara's a smart woman. She'll make sure you lose everything. You might want to prepare for that." He didn't respond, didn't even look at me. He just started the car and drove away, leaving me standing there in the doorway, my mind racing. I didn't know what came next. I didn't have a plan yet. But for now, I was content with one thing. Liam's smugness was gone, replaced by fear and regret. He wasn't the one in control anymore. I was. And I intended to keep it that way. When the door closed behind them, the silence in the house was deafening. I stood there for a moment, staring at the space they had just occupied, trying to process the whirlwind of emotions raging inside me. Anger, betrayal, sadness, relief. It was a strange mix, but the one thing I didn't feel was regret. Exposing Liam and Emma for what they had done wasn't just the right thing to do. It was necessary. I walked back to the living room and sank into the couch. My body felt heavy, like all the energy had been drained from me. My phone buzzed on the coffee table, and I instinctively reached for it. It was a message from Clara. "Thank you for telling me. I'll handle him from here." Short, direct. Clara wasn't one to waste words. And that message confirmed what I already knew. Liam's life was about to implode. Clara was a fighter, and she wouldn't let him off easy. For a moment, I almost felt bad for him. Almost. But then I remembered the way he smirked at me, so sure of his victory. That moment would be etched into my mind forever. I thought about calling my parents. They deserved to know what had happened, didn't they? But then I hesitated. How do you even start that conversation? Hey, Mom and Dad, guess what? Liam's been sleeping with my wife. No, I couldn't do that. Not yet. This was a mess I needed to sort out on my own, at least for now. The hours passed slowly, the house feeling emptier than ever. I wandered into the kitchen, absent-mindedly opening cabinets and closing them again. I wasn't hungry, but I needed to do something, anything, to distract myself. My mind kept replaying the scene over and over, each time amplifying the pain. Emma's betrayal hurt, but Liam's? That cut even deeper. He wasn't just my brother. He was my twin. We'd shared everything, birthdays, childhood memories, inside jokes. And yet, here he was, throwing it all away for what? A fling? A chance to win some imaginary competition he'd been having with me his entire life? I couldn't stop thinking about the way he'd looked at me when I walked into the bedroom. That smirk. It wasn't just arrogance, it was triumph. Liam had wanted me to see it, to feel the full weight of his betrayal. And that's what stung the most. As the sun began to set, I realized I couldn't sit in this house any longer. It wasn't just the silence, it was the memories. Everywhere I looked, there was a reminder of the life I thought I had. The dining table where Emma and I had shared countless meals. The couch where we binge-watched our favorite shows. Even the bed upstairs, now tainted by their betrayal. I grabbed my keys and drove aimlessly for a while, letting the hum of the engine drown out my thoughts. Eventually, I found myself parked outside Clara's house. I didn't plan to come here, but it felt right. I got out of the car and knocked on the door. Clara opened it, her face a mixture of anger and exhaustion. She didn't say anything at first, just stepped aside to let me in. I followed her to the living room, where she sank into an armchair and gestured for me to sit. "Do you want a drink?" she asked, her voice flat. "Sure," I said, though I wasn't sure what I needed more, whiskey or water. She returned with 2 glasses of wine, handing one to me before sitting down again. We sat in silence for a moment, both of us staring at the floor. Finally, Clara spoke. "I always thought he might do something like this. I didn't think it would be with her." I nodded, taking a sip of the wine. I didn't think Liam could sink this low, but I guess I shouldn't be surprised. Clara laughed bitterly. "He's always been jealous of you, hasn't he? I mean, I've seen it over the years. The way he tries to one-up you, the way he talks about you. I just didn't think he'd go this far." "Neither did I admitted. "But here we are." We talked for hours, sharing stories and filling in the gaps. Clara told me how Liam had been acting distant lately, how he'd started coming home later and later. I told her about the subtle signs I'd missed with Emma, the private conversations, the lingering glances. By the time I left, we both felt a little lighter, though the pain was far from gone. When I got back home, the house was just as I'd left it, quiet and suffocating. But now, there was a sense of resolve building inside me. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. Liam and Emma had made their choices, and now it was time for them to face the consequences. I wasn't sure what the next steps would look like: divorce papers, family fallout, endless explanations. But I knew one thing for certain. I wasn't going to let this break me. Liam thought he'd won, but the game wasn't over. Not yet. The next few days passed in a blur of phone calls, paperwork, and endless thoughts. I knew what had to be done. I couldn't stay married to Emma after what she'd done, and I certainly couldn't maintain any semblance of a relationship with Liam. The betrayal had cut too deep, leaving wounds that even time wouldn't heal. Filing for divorce wasn't an easy decision, but it was the only option. I contacted a lawyer the morning after the fallout. The conversation was clinical, devoid of the emotional storm I felt brewing inside. The lawyer asked questions about assets, custody. Thankfully, Emma and I didn't have children, and evidence. When I mentioned the video, they assured me that it would make things swift and definitive. Emma didn't fight me on it, which was surprising. She seemed almost resigned when I handed her the papers. "I deserve this," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. For once, I agreed with her. She packed her things quietly over the next few days, each box she carried out feeling like a piece of closure. But Liam? Liam didn't make it easy. It started with phone calls, dozens of them. At first, they were angry. "Why did you have to send the video to Clara?" he shouted the first time I picked up. "You've ruined my life." I hung up. He called again. "I wasn't trying to hurt you, Noah. It just happened. Can't we move past this?" Move past this? The sheer audacity of those words nearly made me laugh. I told him never to contact me again, but Liam wasn't one to take no for an answer. When the calls stopped working, he showed up at my door. I didn't let him in. Instead, I stood on the porch, arms crossed, watching him squirm. "What do you want, Liam?" I need to talk to you. Face to face," he said, looking genuinely desperate. "There's nothing to talk about," I replied coldly. "You made your choices. Now live with them." "Noah, please," he begged, but I slammed the door in his face. It wasn't out of anger, not entirely. It was about self-preservation. Letting Liam back into my life, even for a moment, felt like inviting a snake into my home. Meanwhile, Clara was taking Liam to court. She wasn't just filing for divorce. She was going for everything. Alimony, a share of his assets, even the house. And honestly, I was rooting for her. If anyone deserved to walk away with nothing, it was Liam. Our parents, of course, got involved. They were devastated when they found out, though not entirely surprised. We always knew Liam was difficult, my mom admitted during one of our strained conversations. But this? I don't even know what to say. Dad was less forgiving. "He's dead to me," he said bluntly. "You don't do that to family." It should have felt good to have their support, but it didn't. Nothing about this felt good. Emma, for her part, tried to stay out of the spotlight. She moved in with a friend and avoided contact with anyone in my circle. Occasionally, I get a message from her, an apology, a plea for forgiveness, but I never responded. What was the point? Forgiving her wouldn't change what she'd done. The legal proceedings moved quickly, thanks to the mountain of evidence against both Emma and Liam. By the time the divorce was finalized, I felt a strange sense of relief. It wasn't happiness, exactly, but it was close. Clara and I kept in touch throughout it all. She was a force to be reckoned with, handling the situation with a grace and strength I could only admire. We met a few times to exchange updates and vent about our shared frustrations. Those conversations were a lifeline, a reminder that I wasn't alone in this mess. One evening, over coffee, she asked me, "Do you ever think they regret it?" I thought about it for a moment before answering. I think Liam regrets getting caught. I think Emma regrets losing the life we built. But do they regret what they did? I don't know. And honestly, I don't care. Clara nodded, her expression thoughtful. "Yeah, I feel the same way." By the time everything was settled, divorce finalized, assets divided, ties cut, I felt like I could finally breathe again. The weight of their betrayal was still there, but it was lighter now, less suffocating. I'd survived the storm, and for the first time in months, I could see a glimmer of light on the horizon. Liam and Emma, on the other hand, weren't faring so well. Liam lost everything. His marriage, his reputation, and a good chunk of his savings thanks to Clara's relentless pursuit of justice. Emma wasn't much better off, living in a small apartment and working a job she clearly hated. And me? I was rebuilding. Slowly but surely, I was finding my way back to myself. The wounds they left would take time to heal, but I was determined not to let them define me. I was free, and that freedom was worth every painful step of the journey. After the legal dust settled, life felt eerily quiet. The divorce was finalized, the assets were divided, and Emma was officially gone. Yet, the emptiness in the house was suffocating. Every room felt haunted by memories, both the good ones that now felt like lies and the bad ones I hadn't realized were forming until it was too late. I didn't want to live in a place so deeply tied to betrayal, so I started making changes. The bedroom was first. The bed, the curtains, even the paint on the walls. It all had to go. I tore it down piece by piece, replacing it with things that felt more like me. It wasn't just about redecorating. It was about reclaiming my space, my identity, my life. But healing wasn't as simple as swapping out furniture. The betrayal left scars deeper than I expected. Some nights, I'd sit on the couch and replay the scene in my head. Liam's smug smirk, Emma's pale face, the sound of Clara's furious voice on the phone. It was a loop I couldn't shut off. Clara and I kept in touch. It started with updates on the legal proceedings, what the lawyers were saying, how the divorce settlements were progressing. But over time, our conversations grew more personal. We shared our frustrations, our pain, and even moments of dark humor about the mess Liam and Emma had created. "I can't believe I married someone so blind to consequences," Clara said during one of our calls. "You and me both," I replied. "But hey, at least they have each other now." We both laughed, though there was no joy in it. Liam and Emma's downward spiral was hard to ignore. Liam lost everything: his wife, his reputation, his financial stability. Clara made sure of that. Her lawyer was relentless, and Liam ended up paying dearly, literally and figuratively. He had to sell his car, move into a cramped apartment, and take on multiple part-time jobs just to scrape by. Emma didn't fare much better. She moved into a tiny, run-down apartment across town and picked up a job at a local cafe. I heard through mutual acquaintances that she wasn't handling things well. She looked tired and withdrawn, a shadow of the vibrant woman I once knew. One day, Clara and I met for coffee, and the conversation turned reflective. "Do you think they're happy now?" she asked, stirring her drink absently. I thought about it for a moment before answering. I don't think they even know what happiness is. They thought their affair was exciting, something worth risking everything for. But now, they're just dealing with the fallout. Clara nodded. "It's funny, isn't it? They thought they were so clever, so untouchable, and now they've got nothing." It was true. Liam and Emma had thought they could build something out of betrayal, that their connection could withstand the wreckage they caused. But the weight of their choices was too much. Their relationship crumbled under the pressure. I heard through the grapevine that they'd started arguing constantly, their once secret affair now a public disaster. Liam, who had always relied on his charm to get by, found himself alone. People who once admired him for his charisma now saw him for what he was, a man willing to betray his own brother. Emma, meanwhile, seemed to drift through life, unable to hold on to anything meaningful. As for me, I was rebuilding. Slowly, piece by piece, I started to find myself again. I threw myself into work, rediscovered old hobbies, and spent more time with friends who reminded me of the person I used to be. I even started volunteering at a local shelter, something I'd always wanted to do but never made time for. Clara became a big part of that journey. Our shared experience created a bond that was hard to describe. She understood the pain, the anger, and the lingering doubts in a way no one else could. Over time, our conversations became less about Liam and Emma and more about ourselves. One evening, as we walked through a quiet park, Clara said something that stayed with me. "You know, I used to think what they did would define me forever, that it would be this black mark on my life. But now, I see it differently. They're just a chapter, not the whole story." She was right. Liam and Emma were a part of my story, but they weren't the end of it. Their betrayal had hurt me deeply, but it also forced me to grow in ways I never thought possible. Eventually, the pain began to fade. It didn't disappear completely. Some wounds never fully heal, but it stopped consuming me. I learned to laugh again, to find joy in the small things, and to open myself up to the possibility of a brighter future. As for Liam and Emma, they became distant memories, remnants of a past I no longer cared to dwell on. Their lives continued to spiral. Liam lost job after job, his once celebrated charm now useless. Emma, burdened by guilt and regret, faded into obscurity. Their relationship, built on lies and betrayal, couldn't survive the reality they created. I moved forward, leaving their chaos behind. My days became brighter, my steps lighter. I wasn't defined by their actions anymore. They were just two people who made choices that destroyed their lives, but not mine. I had reclaimed my story, and I wasn't going to let them write another word of it. Freedom. That's what I felt as I closed that chapter. True freedom. For the first time in a long time, I was living for myself, and for that, I was grateful. Life after betrayal isn't about erasing the pain. It's about learning how to live with it and move forward. As time passed, the wounds left by Emma and Liam began to heal. They didn't disappear entirely, scars like that never do, but they became less raw, less consuming. For the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe again, like I could live without constantly looking over my shoulder or questioning everything I thought I knew. I threw myself into rebuilding my life, not just physically but emotionally. The house I had shared with Emma felt like a museum of memories I no longer wanted to keep, so I made it mine. I replaced the furniture, repainted the walls, and turned it into a space that reflected who I was now, not who I had been with her. It wasn't just about aesthetics. It was about reclaiming my identity piece by piece. My focus shifted to things that truly mattered. I reconnected with friends I hadn't seen in years, picked up hobbies I'd long forgotten, and even started mentoring at a local youth center. It was rewarding to invest my energy into something meaningful, something untainted by the betrayal I'd endured. Slowly but surely, I began to rediscover who I was outside of the shadow of Liam and Emma's actions. Clara remained a constant presence during this time. What started as shared pain over our ex-spouses grew into a genuine friendship. We didn't need to talk about Liam and Emma anymore. They had become little more than footnotes in our conversations. Instead, we shared dreams, goals, and laughter. Clara had an infectious optimism about her, a belief that life could still be beautiful even after everything we'd been through. One evening, as we sat on a park bench watching the sun set, Clara said something that struck a chord. "You know, I used to think this was the end, that Liam's betrayal would define me forever. But now, I see it as a new beginning, a chance to start fresh." She was right. What Liam and Emma had done didn't have to be the defining moment of my life. It was a chapter, sure, but not the whole story. I had the power to decide how the rest of my story would unfold. Liam and Emma's lives, on the other hand, continued to spiral. I heard bits and pieces through the grapevine. Liam bouncing between jobs, struggling to stay afloat financially. Emma drifting from one temporary living situation to another, her once vibrant personality dulled by regret. Their relationship didn't last long under the weight of its own toxicity. Without the thrill of secrecy and betrayal, they had nothing to hold them together. They fell apart as quickly as they had come together. There was a time when I might have felt satisfaction in their misery, but now, I just felt indifference. Their downfall was their own doing, and it was no longer my concern. I had more important things to focus on, my own happiness, my own future. As the years passed, I found myself genuinely content. My friendships deepened, my work flourished, and my days were filled with moments of joy and peace. The scars of betrayal were still there, but they no longer defined me. Instead, they served as a reminder of my resilience, of the strength it took to move forward. Clara and I remained close, our bond growing stronger with time. She had her own journey of healing, her own story to write, but we supported each other in ways no one else could. There were moments when I wondered if our friendship might evolve into something more, but I didn't rush it. I wanted to be sure that I was ready, sure that I wouldn't carry the baggage of the past into something new. One day, Clara said, "You deserve to be happy, Noah. Truly happy. Don't let what they did hold you back." Her words stuck with me. For so long, I had been focused on surviving, on rebuilding, that I hadn't stopped to think about what happiness could look like for me now. Slowly, I allowed myself to dream again, to imagine a future filled with love, trust, and possibility. By the time I fully embraced this new chapter, Liam and Emma were distant memories. I didn't know what had become of them, and I didn't care. Their choices had shaped their lives, just as mine had shaped mine. The difference was, I had chosen to rise above, to build something better. As I looked ahead, I felt something I hadn't felt in years: hope. Hope for new beginnings, for meaningful connections, for a life that wasn't defined by betrayal but by growth and resilience. This was my story, and I was ready to write the next chapter. It wouldn't be perfect, life never is, but it would be mine, and that was enough.